But especially to you, Governor LePage, welcome to the college. And tonight we're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. And we've asked Mike Redmond, who is sitting right there, to lead us in the pledge. Mike is a former United States Marine and is currently serving in the U.S. Army Reserve. Sir.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you so much.
Thank you all. And what I would like to do this evening is, rather than just sit up here and read a lot of stuff, I want to take a few minutes to talk about four major items that I believe are critical for the state of Maine to move forward. And we can argue, we can disagree, we can agree. It makes no difference, because I firmly believe if you look around the United States of America today and look at the states that have these four issues under control, they are leading with the strongest economies. And we don't have to go very far to see that. We can just go to New Hampshire. Number one, income tax. Income tax is probably the biggest single thing that hurts an economy. If you want to make money, if money and prosperity is an issue, it's very important that you leave as much money into the society and let people spend money the way they want to spend their money and invest their money the way they want to invest their money, rather than have government do it. Government does not do well in investing your money. We see it in Social Security, we've seen it in Medicare, we've seen it in the only program in my lifetime that I would say the government has done well is the GI Bill after World War II. It's probably one of the most successful programs that was ever developed. So income tax is a major issue. As long as you continue to be above the national average, above the New England average, you're going to struggle. And let me give you an example. 10 states have no income tax. One of them is New Hampshire. New Hampshire is about the third best economy right now. Arguably the third best economy. The New England average for income tax by state is 6.6%. That's the New England average. The national average for income tax is 5.5%. And the average for a rural state, which we are, is 5.1 or 5.2%. We now, after 5 years of battling, we managed to go from 8.5 to 7.15, which will take effect next January. Not very good progress. Not a very dynamic way to move forward. And when you look at our per capita income, we are one of the lagging states. So people say, well, you're not creating jobs. Well, let me tell you. I had a company this morning came in to see me. 400 employees here in Maine. A Wall Street top 5 most famous poorest company. Thinking are struggling in Maine. Struggling in Maine because of my second topic. They're not complaining about taxes. They're complaining about energy costs. Their energy cost is gone up. It's forcing them to become unprofitable in the state of Maine. They have plants around the world. This is the highest cost plant they have because of our energy costs. Now let me give you an idea how bad it is. If you're living in Montreal, which is a major metropolitan city, and you're heated with electricity, so your power and your electricity in the months of January, February, and March, you would be paying close to $100 a month. if you had a home of about 1,100 square feet. How many of you are paying $100 a month without heating your home with electricity? Or very close to $100 a month? Without heat, they're down around $20 a month, or $30 a month, between 20 and 30, for all the other electricity needs except for heat. Pretty hard to get that in Maine. The average home in Maine is $84 without heat at 1,100 square feet. Airbus is leaving France. We just left the General Council of France. Airbus is coming to the United States. They're going to go to Alabama. So I spoke to the chairman of the board. Alabama's electricity cost is in the 4-cent range, between 4 and 5 cents. We're at 15. That's the differential. We're 3 times what Alabama's going to be charging for electricity. And I remember saying you have great lobster, but you're very naive about the cost of energy to assemble a jet. We have companies up north. I've had companies tell me that if and when you get natural gas and you can lower your cost of energy, we will be there. In 2011, cost about $40,000 to heat the Blaine House. 10,000 gallons at $4 a gallon. So now we don't use oil at all. We use heat pumps. We have for 2 years now. Last 2 years, we haven't even come close to paying what we did in 2011 combined. So energy is your number 2 major obstacle, major obstacle to energy. Now, one good news is we have the state of Massachusetts, the state of Connecticut, the state of Rhode Island, working with the state of Maine in a coalition to bring natural gas to Maine. The issue is we have the ability to take natural gas, we just don't have enough capacity coming to Maine. And so we need to have, the 4 states have got to work together to get a coalition, to get a pipeline built from Marcellus Shale in Pennsylvania, bring it to Maine. Replace oil. Gas is twice as clean and efficient as oil. Now, in 2011, when I became governor, little over 80% of the homes in Maine were heated with oil. We managed to get that down to 62, 63% right now. We've gone to heat pumps, pellets. Some people have managed to get natural gas, LP, compressed natural gas up in the eastern part of eastern part of the state. So we are making improvements, but we're not getting there fast enough. One big problem Maine gets hung up on, and it has been doing it forever. And we are the oldest state in the union, which I think is one of the silliest things that we should be doing because it hurts our people. We're constantly battling about minimum wage. We have 6,000 people in the state of Maine around making minimum wage full-time. We're constantly fighting about minimum wage. Our per capita income is about $40,000 a household. New Hampshire, the minimum wage is below ours, and they make $10,000 more a year than we do. Florida, which has about the 3rd largest economy in the country now, depends on tourism. Their minimum wage is $8. No income tax, by the way. No income tax. New Hampshire, no income tax. I maintain that if you got rid of the income tax, instead of increasing the minimum wage, that all our people in Maine who are on fixed income, which is the largest population of our state, would benefit. But if you increase the minimum wage, those on fixed income are going to get hurt severely. But I don't know anything about that because My opponents say I don't know what I'm talking about. But I look at New Hampshire, I look at Florida, Texas, the best economy in America, has a minimum wage of $7.25. Per capita income is better than the state rates. Very low tax structures. No income tax. Wyoming. Minimum wage in Wyoming is $5.15. It's the national minimum wage. They have one of the highest per capita incomes in the United States with $9 billion surplus. No income tax. South Dakota. They have they're a rural state. They have a minimum wage of $8.50. No income tax. So my point is, if you look at prosperity and the income tax, there's a direct correlation. Less, more money you leave in your pockets, the better the government's going to be. We lose people, they gain people. Why are we the oldest state in the union? Because we are overtaxed. We are significantly overtaxed. Our energy costs are so high, one of the highest, the 12th highest in the country, and we are a border state to Canada, which has some of the lowest in North America. So we are a victim of our own decisions. The next, those are the two areas. The third area I want to talk about is welfare. I get, particularly the press, they really don't think I do a very good job on welfare. But I get letters and emails and calls and people wanting to go out and meet people that say, thank you, Governor. I had one lady write me a letter that said, I hated you when you were elected and you went after welfare. I just hated what you were doing. Until I realized that when I had to go find a job, that now I've been 6 or 7 years on welfare. Now I have 2 children. I'm a single mom. I don't get anything. Because I realized that once I get out there and I got a job, that I could do a lot and I could get paid a reasonable wage, so I don't need any benefits from the state. I have health insurance, first time she'd had it in a long time. The point is, if you're an able-bodied person, you will feel much better about yourself if you're out working every day and contributing to society rather than taking from society. Now, hear me. I said if you're able-bodied, because there are classes of people with mental disabilities, intellectual challenges, people with disabilities, people with age. I mean, I can't do as much today as I did 50 years ago. Now, it's not a matter of throwing people off welfare. It isn't. It's about educating people on welfare to use, to optimize the skills they have. And if they still need help, I'll be the first one there. But I really think we have a limited number of resources available to help, to develop a safety net that will take care of our elderly, those with mental illness, and those with disabilities. And I will tell you one story that I think it's true. People laugh at it most of the time when I tell it, but it's true. Came out of the dentist one day, back in about 2013, maybe 12, and there's a man leaning on his car. He has one leg, the other one's cut right up, above the knee, well above the knee. He says, Governor, if you could give me a leg, I could go to work. I could go to work on one leg. And he says, I don't qualify for any of the programs you have. I went back to the office. We had recently hired a young lady attorney, and I said, Holly, I got a project for you. You gotta find me a leg. Here's the gentleman's name, here's the phone number, get him a leg. And believe it or not, she did. Within a couple of weeks, she called around and called some doctors, and boom, 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 and then all of a sudden we had one. They measured him for a leg, and boom, he's working now. That's what we're talking about. She was a pretty challenging first week on the job. I gotta go find somebody a leg. So we've had a lot of laughs about that. But that's what we're talking about. It's not that we don't want to help. We want to help, but we want you to help yourself as well as we help you. And that's what it's all about. That's not the kind of press I generally get, but that's where we come from. And finally, and this one here is something that I simply don't understand. I just simply don't understand where the legislature is coming from. We made a proposal last year that we would borrow some bonds, sell some bonds, and the state of Maine would pay for the interest on the bonds, which is roughly 2 to 2.5%. We would give students that want to go to higher education, technical school, training beyond high school, not restricted to college or anything, training beyond high school. If they have to borrow money, give it to them interest-free. And then, if an employer hires that person, or if a person comes from another state to Maine and they have heavy student loans, we would go to the employer and say, if you pay the student loan, we will give you dollar for dollar reduction on your income tax. Because the highest debt in America today, the highest debt is student loan debt to our kids. I have a young couple that work at Maine Medical. He is a he's a physician's assistant, and she has her master's in physical therapy. They both work. She sends me a letter. Governor, can you help us? We're 28 years old, we want to start a family. We can't afford to. We're renting because we can't afford to buy a house. We don't have a down payment, and the bank is deducting our student loans from what we could borrow as a mortgage. So I'm thinking, man, you got a whole lot of money, $168,000 for a young married couple. $168,000 they're going to pay on. That's got to be paid for before they can think of having children or afford to have children. Now, frankly, if you wait till you can afford them, you never will. Because I come to realize that if I ever waited until I could afford children, I'd probably still be single. Thank God I got a wife and she was at work. All kidding aside. So the point is, those are the 4 issues. And I think it's Mainers. And the reason why that's important, the student loans is important, is we need to get young people into Maine. We need to grow our population with younger people. State of Maine is roughly 44 years, median age is 44 years old. We're competing against the state of Utah, median age, 44. The state of Utah, 29. They're the youngest, we're the oldest. It doesn't sound like a lot, but the average age of our worker right now is in the 50s, between 55 and 60. Is the average age of fishermen, of farmers, people working at the shipyard. It's really crazy when you start looking at it, because people live older and older and older. And so we have a very large population of people above 65. And what happens to our youth? They can't make a living with the jobs that we have. You cannot, and the only place that you will see it is if you define poverty differently in other regions of the world than here. Is you'll see prosperity. So I maintain we have to lower the age. We have to get a working class back into Maine. Lower the age of the population so they're contributing. Now let me tell you why. Let me tell you why that's That's necessary. In Maine, we have 1.3 million, roughly 14,000 people die every year. Okay? 14,000 people die every year. 12,000 babies are born. So you can't catch up that way. You can't catch up. You cannot sustain our economy, and we can't sustain our population or our existence. 25 years ago, we had 225,000 kids in school, K through 12. Today, 179. It's dropping every year. Why? More people dying than being born. Now, out of the 12,000 people that are born, it gets even worse. 1,000 of those babies are addicted or affected by opiate drugs, and we don't know what the long-term implications are going to be. We're just starting now to see some of the problems that are developing with late developments, particularly in intellectual development, the brain development. They'll be fine, but it's going to take longer for some of these kids. Then we have another about 700, 750 babies born a year that are born with very rare and very traumatic diseases that are very, very hard to cure. And they will never grow to be to the optimum level of society. In other words, they'll reach some optimum level or medical, highest medical growth that they can, but they're not going to be able to achieve what the average person will achieve. Either they have disabilities, physical disabilities, mental disabilities, autism, as you all know, is a very Down syndrome, some of the things I'm talking about that will hold people back. These are very traumatic times. So in order to sustain a society, you need 2.1 people or 2.3 people. There's a statistic, they say, to sustain and grow, you need to have so many young people every year. So we need to lower the age of our population so that they marry and grow the population. We are a society in Maine that is not suffering from overpopulation. So those are the issues that I think, and those I have programs, and we tried to move in that direction. The reason I do what I do now, and I'm going to do this until 2016, election day, is because I think it's important that people hear it. And, I must confess, last week I read about 50 articles that have been written for me, or against me, or towards me, or defining me over the last 5 years. And I will tell you this, with everything that I've done and said and gone through the last 5 years, I will tell you right now, all of you in the press, you have no clue who I am. You have no idea who your governor is. And it's a shame, because you people should be people helping us move this society forward. And with that, I'm going to shut up before you write the next article. And then I'll open it up for questions.
We'll get to some questions. I know we do have some legislators in the room, and I'd like to recognize those people. Real quick, if you are a legislator, former or present, please stand up so we can recognize you. You have the one, very quickly. Yeah. Thanks for being here tonight. I can say
this lady, I know this gentleman. I don't know you, but I know Senator Brakey, and he's doing a great job.
Well, you have met now.
We met, I'll check your voting record.
It's like it.
Oh, well.
We can agree to disagree, right?
I will say, let me say two more things before questions. There are three types of legislators that go to Augusta, seriously. And some of them, a third of them, go there for the right reason. They go there and their primary focus is on their neighbors, their peoples in their communities, and people in the state. Then you have 1/3 of the people that go there and they have their own personal agenda, or they're bought into a mindset, and they're limited on the agenda pieces that they're willing to deal with. So they're you know, everybody's got an opinion, and they're fine, go for it. And I don't have a problem with that group. But there's a third group. And the third group is the real concerning one. Is the group that comes to Augusta, they're excited to get that representative plate or that senator's plate. They sit in the back room and they do what they are told. And that's the most dangerous person you could ever elect. Those are not good for society. They're not even good for themselves. And I made that comment one day, and then a legislator came up and said, gave me a big hug and said, "Which one am I?" And I said, "Tomorrow morning after you brush your teeth, look in the mirror." Because that should tell it all. Because I'm not here to tell you who you are and what you do, but I am telling you there are 3 types. Then there are 3 types of people that as a governor you deal with every day. You deal in believers, people that believe what you're doing. Then you run into people that you can persuade because they will listen and they will weigh both sides and they make a decision. And then you have hostiles. And hostiles, you may as well forget it because you're just wasting your breath. And I figured out, people say you're a bully, you fight to. Listen, I've been in business 45 years. You've got to qualify deals. You've got to qualify deals. And so you learn to qualify people. And I've come at my age, I don't want to waste any more time. I got short time left. Like they say, I'm only here for a short time, so I'm here for a good time. So with that, questions?
We will open it up for questions. I don't think we have any hostiles here in the room tonight, so I appreciate that. But I can say I can say with confidence that we will get to every question tonight, and we'll need some more from you to keep the dialogue going after I get through these. But Senator Brakely, if you could ask your question first, and then you submitted one.
Yeah.
You need it, or?
Previously today, you were there for the press conference talking about the bus line that's going to be coming from helping connect Lewis and Auburn and Portland.
Right.
I know our Mayor Jonathan LePage has been talking about trying to get something like this going for a long time, and finally, I guess with your help, that's happening. I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit more about that.
I'll tell you right now, great thing. It's a great thing. You're going to be able to go from Lewis and Auburn. People in Lewis and Auburn will have like 3 stops. They can get onto a bus, they can go to Portland, they can go beyond to Boston. Now, we used to have that in Maine. I went to Husson College. In 1967 and 68, I traveled by bus, by Greyhound bus, from Lewiston, Maine to Bangor. Now, didn't have a lot of money, so I didn't come home often, but when I did come home, I either hitchhiked or I took the bus. In the fall and the spring, I hitchhiked. In the winter, I took the bus. Got me from point A to point B inexpensively. So I do believe it's a great thing that we're going to have a transit in the state of Maine. And I'm hoping that Concord, who is going to be the operator, sees the value of maybe even going Bangor. Sees the value of reaching out and doing it into other populated areas of the state. Because like any other transportation, you need critical mass if you're going to public transportation. In Maine, we have become very, very dependent on cars. I was told today, I think it's 93 or 94% of Mainers have at least one car in their family, that they have access to a car. That's what it is. So that's pretty big number to overcome. Now, when I was in Connecticut, you hop on the train, go to the city in no time at all. But that doesn't happen in a rural state like Maine, particularly with the distribution of our population. So, yes, I think it's great.
Thank you.
Long-winded answer, wasting a lot of time.
Buck Buchanan, where are you? Jeff, do you have questions on welfare?
My question, well, I wrote it down as welfare, but it goes along other things like taxes and things. I want to use an analogy of a foundation of a house. You know, it takes a lot of little bricks to make that foundation. With the welfare thing, I have a problem. I used to be a landlord and used to see the fraud all the time. And my question is, why do we have a hard time trying to get people off the welfare that shouldn't be there? Why do we have all these government programs that waste money, things like that? And the comeback to that is, well, it's just a small percentage of the whole budget. But to me, that's that little brick. You gotta start somewhere. Why not eat away at all these small little expenses that are killing us?
Well, we are. We are under my administration, but it's the first administration since the early 90s that's even attempted to look at welfare. First one that's even attempted. What has happened when you get into a rut of high taxation and low per capita income, there are needs, there are services and needs that are out there. For instance, right now the federal government we're fighting with them. They want $30 million back. They're saying that we misused a lot of welfare money, up to $30 million. Do you know what it is? And I know some of the reporters here, you have written and crucified me in the newspapers for being bad on welfare, not generous enough. It's because we didn't force people or didn't ask them to go look for a job before we put them on welfare. Upwards of $30 million. We owe people, we owe some money over at Riverview, the mental health, the federal government is saying they decertified us, not because we did anything wrong. We did what most states do. We put our forensic patients in with our civil patients in a facility that has four pods. We don't commingle them in the pods, we separate them. Some are criminally not responsible, others are not capable of going to trial. They're in one section, one half, and then the civil patients. Well, there again, we get decertified because we have them in the same building. Other states are doing it in the same building. But what they're saying to us is, well, we don't even want you to use the same psychiatrist. So what we, believe me. So what we did is we opened up a unit at the Maine State Prison to try to put the dangerous people who are physically dangerous to the staff and to themselves at the Maine State Prison. We've opened up a medical unit, and we're trying to put those that are not able to, those that are unsafe around people, we try to put them up there. Well, the ACLU and everybody's after us saying that's not appropriate. Where do you put them? It costs $1,200 a day to have somebody in a mental hospital. These people don't need to be in a mental institution. They don't have to be hospitalized. They just have to be in a safe place so they don't hurt themselves or others, because they are at maximum medical improvement. And we're fighting that all the time. We're fighting it with NAMI, we're fighting it with the ACLU. Every single day of the week we're fighting it, and you're paying for it. Now, good news, our budget is finally under control in DHHS. The first 2 years I was here, we would have budget what we call structural holes in our budget of $100, $200, $250 million a year. It was crazy. We finally got it under control. We have half the people on TANF that we used to have, because all we did is said, you have to go look for work, and they said, no, I don't want to work, or I don't want to go look, and they're automatically gone. People on SNAP, we're down about 20% there. So we are making improvement, but it's very slow. And why is it slow? because the legislature determines who gets it, who doesn't. And not everybody in Augusta, the 186 people in the State House, don't all agree on using education to work with people. Many of them believe just put the money at it and we gotta go to the cocktail party. Because people, very few will roll up their sleeve and do the hard work with people with mental illness. Very, very few. Most people, they'll throw money at it and walk away. And my staff knows that on Saturday mornings, I open the office till noon, I meet with people, and I'm constantly, after my staff, telling them what's going on with this case, what's going on with this case. We're working to help people individually. So that's how it gets away from you. You get into what I call bureaucracy overtaking common sense.
Our next question will come from Melanie Murphy.
Evening, Governor. Thank you for coming out tonight. I'm here on behalf of our Maine Compassion Center. We're a medical marijuana dispensary located here in Auburn. And we're clearly seeing, as everyone else is, that opiate abuse is a tremendous problem in this state. And I'm here tonight to ask on behalf of the dispensaries that are licensed and regulated by the Department of Health and Human Services, what can we and other businesses in the state do to help you fight that drug trafficking that's coming into our state?
The problem with opiates in the state of Maine right now, we have, we're spending somewhere around $76 million in the last year. $76 million, folks, on treatment and rehabbing people with opiate addictions. We are spending that kind of money. In 2011, when I came in, it was around 50. We're up about a third since I've been governor. We spend $3 million a year on getting the traffickers. That's all. That's a major issue. $3 million a year. And then last session, they gave us two more MDEA agents. We need 22. We asked for 22. We cut it to 14. They gave us 2. We need 4 right tomorrow in Portland alone. What people do not understand about opiates is the people that traffic opiates are people from out of state, and it's a business. They're not users, they're not addicted. These are business people. These are business people that want to make money. And they come to Maine because there's a demand. We are doing very, very little to attack the supply side, which is guy like Smooth and guy like LJ and guys like that you see in the paper every day. This morning, 5 people again, just in the, this year alone. Last year, all year we had 32 meth labs. Already we're at 40. So the issue is, it is disastrous out there. I met with people from the dispensary this week about how do we get regulations in there that get this whole marijuana, medical marijuana, away from smoking it, but in extracting it in other forms so that it can do the jobs that it's intended to do. If they told me that you legalize marijuana tomorrow and heroin goes off the streets, I'd be all in. But that's not the way it is. Then the third thing, and this is where you can help, is the marketing. The marketing of medical marijuana. The marketing of, to our schools, to our kids, to our families, that be cautious when you're prescribed opiates because they're very addictive, so use them very sparingly. I was given a bottle about this thick of Oxycontin, 10 years ago. And after I had back surgery, and I took one, and man, I'll tell you, my head was spinning, they're gone. I never took them again. I just took Aleve and Tylenol and Aleve. It's called the Freddie Carter something. A friend of mine said, take 2 of these and 2 of these, and they're better than that stuff you take. The point is, where we are losing the battle, is we we have our head in the sand when it comes to the supply side. People think that it's a person addicted to heroin, for instance, who's buying heroin and selling it to their friends so they can buy it. That's not. These are the victims. They are the victim. The people that are selling it are coming in from New Haven, from Waterbury, from Philadelphia, from all over the country, and selling it to people here. And some of the people here got addicted to prescription drugs. And now they can't get them, so they go to heroin. We got to get those people off the street. We got to continue to treat those that are addicted, and we have to do education. Like I said, we spent $76 million in treatment, $3 million in law enforcement, 0 in education. 0 from the state side. Now, I'm sure, like, I know that the dispensaries are doing what they can. Some of the hospitals are doing what they can, but it's not high on the priority list. But government needs to pay attention and start educating and go back into the junior high schools, middle schools, the high schools, because we're killing our children.
So if you're aware of the 3 million and you want to bump that to get that more funded, who are you going to talk to about that?
I put a bill up in the legislature and it gets killed every year. I've been saying it for 5 years now. I have been one of the biggest advocates to get more supply side on the streets, and I keep getting killed in the legislature. They simply, this is what we need. Right now, our county jails are full of people. They're what is called pre-trial incarceration. They're charged, but they don't go to court. Why? We don't have enough judges. DAs, we need right now, just to keep to the caseload, just to keep at the level of the caseload that are coming in, we need 22 DAs throughout the state, and we need 14 to 20 MDEA agents. I keep asking, it keeps getting rejected. Now, I did figure out something this year. Go to a Democrat, ask them to sponsor it, and they'll get it done.
Arthur Berry?
Thank you, Governor. I want to thank you for taking over these. I want to thank you and your wife for helping the vets. And I understand a little bit about you because I was streetwise at 13.
So you
I
know
know
where
what
it comes
it
from.
is. I know what it's like to get involved in politics because I get shut down in the town that I'm at. I want to go on the budget committee, got turned down because I guess obviously they wanted something else. But anyway, my question was to you. When we go to get a driver's license, you have to have a picture taken. And it has a number, and if you ever get stopped, they run it through their computer in the police car.
Right.
They know who you are and where you're from. I'd like to see that on EBT cards. If you have to have the right to drive and you need a picture, the picture helps when you use a credit card. I put on mine, ask for ID.
Yes.
Why is it that we can't do something as simple as putting a picture so that they can't use it to get out of jail, or if they get stopped for going into a store and buying cigarettes and alcohol?
Okay. You can, if your legislature says you can. In our case, we are doing pictures on EBT cards going forward, but we're only allowed to do it if it's voluntary. We can't force it because the federal government says, unless your state says you will have a picture, you can't do it just from the governor's office. What we do is we say, we are going to put your picture on EBT card. If they say no, we got to stop. I will tell you this though, the overwhelming majority, like in the high 90s, in the 90 percentile of people that come in, have their picture taken and put it on their EBT card immediately. Particularly middle-aged folks and above. They do, they have no reason not to. There are some that just refuse. We can't put the picture on because the legislature does not allow us to put it on. It's that simple. If they said we could, we can't. The government says you can't. They came up and said, we don't want you to put pictures on EBT cards. And I think there was a few, maybe there's some people here that were in the room. And I said, fine. If you don't want us to put pictures on the EBT card, that's fine. We are no longer going to do EBT cards. You take it over, it's a federal program. And before they left, they said, well, we'll let you put them on if they're voluntary. That's what happened. I have a license. I have a concealed weapon permit. I have my little card that you get for your passport. I have a passport. I am not ashamed of using it when I'm asked to use it. Because when you're asking me to take your money, you're asking the government who's going to take your money and give it to people, then I need to have the ability to ask them how they're going to use that money. And when you have one ATM machine in the Twin Cities, I won't tell you which one, but there's an ATM machine in this city, in the Twin Cities, that cashes 2% of the total EBT money in the state. One machine. Now tell me that's not a problem. That's a serious problem, but it's only anecdotal to our legislature. It's only anecdotal. Nobody wants to deal with the problem. And much of that money gets every drug bust. Every drug bust, major drug bust, will get 4, 5, 6, 8 EBT cards.
We're out of questions, written ones anyway, but the gentleman right over here, you have a question?
Yes.
What's your name?
My name is Ernie Garland from Waterville.
Yeah.
And
And you're still fighting about the smoke from wood
I
stoves.
got the indoor wood boiler shut down, then I came out, we live in an old stove and a fireplace and a broken camper. Got that shut down. Now the guy's coming at me with a pellet stove, and another guy's got a pellet stove, and the guy across the street has a wood stove. 10 people on my street have wood burning equipment, and the average PM 2.5 concentration is 50, but it's equal to 150 micrograms per cubic meter. It has to be stopped and prevented per DHHS essential services policy, but it isn't, so.
Well,
it has to
let me
be
tell you,
helped.
sir, let me tell you, we've had this discussion now for 10 years, is it?
For a while.
Yeah, for a while. The fact of the matter is, I would love to have natural gas so people be using natural gas. I would love for people to have heat pumps and heat with heat pumps. The fact of the matter is, some people can only afford to heat with wood. It's that simple. And we've only had so many resources.
We can talk about the timber harvesting bill too, that.
Oh yeah, I've asked the legislature for 5 consecutive years. I've asked the legislature to give me $5 million a year so I can work with people, poor people, to help them get a more efficient operating heating system. And 5 years later, I've got not a penny. In fact, right now, I'm not selling LMF bonds because of that issue. It's all about trying to get the resources to do exactly what you want done. Yes?
Judges have said that life and health take priority over money and economics and tradition and the whims of politicians, and safety is the supreme law. So it's something that has to be done.
Okay. So do you suggest that your neighbor who doesn't have any other way freezes to death? Because I know somebody that lives by you that lived on a heating blanket.
I know, you're.
So, enough, sir. Next. I mean, I agree with you, but it takes money.
Senator Reiki, you have a question?
I already got one question, but since
so we're looking for more questions. Question one will be
Come on,
coming
you
up.
get 5 minutes.
Question one will be on the ballot in November,
Yeah.
with triple the amount of money going into the publicly funded campaign program. Just wonder if you would share your thoughts on
If that passes, I will tell you folks, if that passes, wow, you're the most gullible population in this state. This, number one, is a scam. It does absolutely nothing to get big money out of this. It doesn't do anything to, there's 13 pages behind that question. You read it and you tell me where you're gonna make improvements on getting big money out of there. You know who spends the most money in an election? Unions. Unions. Do you know who's spending most of the money on this campaign on question one? Co-founder of Facebook who lives in New York. And a very, very wealthy billionaire who's given a ton of money. But you never see his name show up. You don't see his name show up because it's always through a little pack here and there. So that's how they're gonna hide it. There is no need for the state of Maine to have $60,000 for a Senate campaign. 30 is plenty. $15,000 for a House race is about $8,000 too much. And when it comes to governor, you should not allow someone who's going to run your state to take your money for his campaign when you disagree with him. But you have no choice. That's the law. This is a scam from day one. I am totally against the governor being inside of it. I'm totally against violating what the Supreme Court said was legal. And what is happening, unions are exempt because they're not a PAC. That's union membership. It's a membership. They're the big spenders. There are so many ways to get around this law, it's awful. And I do believe, however, that when you're a citizen legislature, that it is appropriate for the state to fund the citizen legislators to a certain level. I don't have a problem with that. Governor, I just think it's just really bad. I mean, I won what they call a convincing vote in a 3-person race. I was still at 49% or so, something like that. It was still less than 50%, but with this law, you would have paid it. Now, let me tell you one other thing. In 2010, if this law was in place, there were 23 candidates in the primaries that would get up to $1 million. This is what the law says, up to $1 million. Now, the legislature's gonna have to fund it. But that's like giving my wife my checkbook. I'm telling you, it's giving you my checkbook. Go spend. Because it's the legislature that's gonna decide. If there's 23 candidates in the primaries, they could get up to $1 million. Now, we had 5 people run for governor. They get up to $2 million. It's $34 million, roughly, for 2010. In 2014, there were 3 candidates. There was no primary. So, you have an independent Democrat, Republican, no primaries, but they still qualify for $1 million out of this law. And then they still qualify for another $2 million for the general election. So that would have been $9 million just for the governor's race. Then you have 151 people at $15,000 times 2 because they're going to run against somebody. Very few run unopposed. So you got 300 people at $15,000 for the House races, 35 people at $60,000 times 2. This is a boondoggle. This is an expensive bill. If you want to pass it, then I think we should go to the legislature. This should be defeated, come to the legislature, and they could make more sense out of it than opening up the cash drawer, because it's gonna be expensive. Now, I don't believe a governor should be taking that kind of money. I don't believe $60,000 should go to a senator. What are you gonna spend it on such small, I mean, we got a rural state that doesn't, each constituent, you can pretty much, particularly in this area, south of Augusta, the geography of your constituents is very small. It's not like being up north where you have 2 counties and you got 1 senator. So I caution, if nothing more, get the bill and read it. That's all you need to do. And then you'll see what it's all about.
About that checkbook comment, doesn't the First Lady handle finances?
She did after the first 10 years of marriage.
Yeah.
She got it out of me.
No, but he's right, and you can see the 13 pages of legislation on that, just that one question, and there are
That's
other pages
crazy.
of legislation at the Secretary of State's website. Just go to the Maine Secretary of State, Google that, you'll be able to find the citizens referendum sheet, and take a look at it, educate yourselves, because the governor's right. You need to inform yourselves about what exactly is in those details.
The other thing about this particular bill that's really almost hypocritical for those who put it out. 20 years ago, Maine had about 1,500 millionaires. We're down under like 400 now. So there's only 400 people in the state that are the big money guys. 20 years ago, New Hampshire had 1,500 millionaires. Now they got 5,000. The millionaires, the people we're talking about, are not from Maine. They're not from Maine. They're sending money in here to tell us how we're going to live our lives. They're influencing how we're going to live our lives. And that's what I don't like. Now, in the governor's race, $1,500 the maximum contribution you can make. That's it. That's what you get. Now, I'll tell you, they say people can be bought. You're not going to get me for $1,500. I'll tell you that. That's just common sense. Now, there are some big companies. We don't get the big corporate donations because you can't do it in Maine. It's illegal already. So I really question the need for this. I don't know why it's done the way it's done. I know certain organizations in Maine are very well funded, and I suppose they want to keep it that way.
All right, we started a little bit late, so we'll take one more question.
Any more?
It's 7 o'clock now.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
My name's Tom Daly. I was just wondering, I'm sure you have a list of things that you would like to accomplish before your term is up. But for Maine to go forward after you have finished what you have started, what are the 2 most important goals that you have that you think the state of Maine should continue pursuing after you're done governor?
Okay. One of them is already, there's more than 2, there's 4. The 4 I talked about earlier. Energy is already being taken care of because we are now the smallest of the 4 states, so we're going to be tagging along and we're going to be a benefactor. That horse is out of the barn. The 2 things that need to move forward, whether you agree or disagree with me, I will tell you, after I studied finance and economics, and I will tell you, and I've run a lot of companies, I've started a lot of companies, I've helped save a lot of them. There are 2 things that are critical. You have to have a workforce that is well-trained. And in order to have a workforce that's well-trained, you've got to have young people that will get the skill levels they need to be in the workforce so that they can help grow the economy. So the student loans, and that whole structure of attracting young people to Maine is critical. Critical. The other thing that's very important, in business, cash is king. You're in business to make money. In government, you go into government to follow it. Once we learn to keep the money into the Maine people's pockets and not go in and take their money and decide that we few in Augusta can spend your money better than you can, once we get out of that mentality, then we can be a prosperous state. But the more we take, the worse off we're going to be as a society. And that's the taxation structure. We overtax ourselves, and then we make bad decisions on how we spend our money. And if you don't believe that, you just go look at the last 30 years on energy policy in Maine. We used to be in the bottom 10, now we're in the top 12. We are number 12 at highest in the country. We make bad decisions in government. We just simply, it's not, the structure of government was never designed, our structure was never designed to be financial responsible. That's you folks. The people that earn the money keep the money. And you give us only enough to run an efficient government. And there are things that we do well, things we do poorly. And so there are things that are government's responsibility, both at the federal level, they have certain responsibilities, and the state level. I think the federal government's taken on more than they can chew, and that's why we have an $18 trillion debt with no relief in sight. In the state of Maine, we keep our per capita income artificially low because the government takes too much from its society. So I'd say tax structure and student loans are the two most critical that we need to start addressing immediately. And how many years have we been below the national average of per capita income? Just look back. Now go backwards and look. It's been most of our lifetimes in this room. So if you keep doing the same thing and expect different results, good luck. One more question and we'll go. I'll let you out of school.
One more? Okay, go
Yes,
ahead.
ma'am.
My name is Julie, and I'm here in Houston.
Cross the river.
Speak up.
Okay, heard a lot of what you said this evening, and a lot of what you said, I may be doing this backwards. I'm trying to learn as best as I can. I am a constituent that would like to see if you can help my family. I would like to be the grandmother of my grandchild, and I don't think he wants to have you as his grandmother, so I am looking to you like him, your grandson.
Who, me?
I'd like to give him back. So, I would like to ask if I can get on maybe one of the Saturday morning.
Absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, we'll give you a number now. You don't even have to wait till Saturday. We'll get,
I have everything here, I can even ask it.
see that gentleman right there? He'll give you a card. You call the number, we'll get a meeting set up with you.
You can be one of Holly's.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But it will be Hollis. It will be Hollis project.
I want to thank you.
Thank you very much. That was a quick one. Anybody else? Yes?
That's a reporter. That is.
All right, that's fine.
Oh, come on, he's a good guy.
Governor, thank you for taking my question. I won't make it too hard on you, and I'm sure you can handle it anyway.
So you're a resident of Auburn?
Auburn, I'm an Auburn resident. I just would like to ask you, you got the open checkbook going online, and I just would like to know your thoughts on why not all government employees, not all state government expenses are getting in there.
I don't know, but I'll check.
He recently did a story on this, and
Okay, well, see, I don't read what you write.
Well,
I do.
I wasn't aware of that, but I'll look into it.
the legislative so the legislative branch doesn't put their information in there, and we're just curious, like, why is that? Would you bring a governor's bill maybe?
Bring a governor's bill to them to pass it so they're transparent? Not gonna happen. I mean, I'd like to bring it, but it's not gonna happen. They're not gonna vote for anything I think of.
You have a couple representatives here, or a senator and a representative, though, that you
Yeah,
can
I
ask
think
that
they're the
very
ones you
question.
should be going, because I didn't realize they were, I thought that they were going to do it, they've never done it, so. It is what it is, you know, they just, they only make rules for other people. That's the problem. You know, and sometimes it's not very good. And sometimes you grow into understanding that you need to change. I was never one that, you know, I'm a free market guy, but I also understand that once government gets involved, you take away free market. So sometimes you've got to make some adjustments. I don't know why they're not being transparent. I think it behooves them to be transparent, then everybody would understand a little more of the difficulties and the choices they have to make. But they are who they are. I don't know. They certainly don't listen to me, as you well know. I've not had much luck in the legislature over 5 years.
All right, well, thank you, everybody, for
Thank you
coming
so
out
much.
tonight.
Thank you for coming out. It's a pleasure. Like I said, this is not about agreeing or disagreeing. It's about making sure you're informed from a perspective. And there's these sheets here that are out there. These are your legislators and your senators. I urge you all, seriously, to get one. Know who your legislators are. Don't be afraid to call them, because that's how things happen. They love to hear from their constituents, and particularly when you're on the same side as they are. They're not so happy to hear from you when they're not hearing what they want to hear. We're all that way. That's human nature. But please, call them, write them. They really are interested in listening to what you have to say. So thank you very much for listening.
You want to have the picture of that?
Here we go.
So is it the individual legislators only, or is it all these legislators?
Great. Thank you.
I'm sorry for a 24-hour.
Thanks, guys.
I'm sure that it's really embarrassed by her.